Futures are pointing to a higher open this morning after investors weighed European bailout plans, causing markets to drop in trading yesterday. U.S. economic data due out today includes the Treasury's monthly budget for May, import and export prices for May, and in U.S. corporate earnings, Michael Kors will issue results before the bell. I'm Brittany Umar, and the morning call starts right now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evan Lazarus with T3Live.com.
And I'm Brittany Umar with The Street, and together we bring you the morning call. So markets were boosted yesterday by news of Spain's rescue package for its banks, but then excitement faded, and traders, I think, have had a little bit of a trouble identifying entry points in this environment. So what has been your strategy?
Well, my strategy has been to day trade. It really is volatility is heightened. A lot of news coming out of Europe, on a sort of a daily basis, especially with Spain and Greece and all the other sort of turmoil going over. Bailout is now officially a four-letter word. The markets just don't like bailout anymore. I don't even like it anymore. I can't even handle the bailouts anymore. So that's really what we saw yesterday. Sunday night, a lot of enthusiasm with the markets. We were up 14, 15, 16 handles at one point when I looked on Sunday evening. Came in Monday morning, we were up about 8 handles. So starting to, the enthusiasm starting to dwindle. And then by lunchtime yesterday, we were firmly negative. S&Ps were down, I think, 6 or 7 handles by lunch, and we closed at or near the low of the day. So market just basically, flat out rejecting the enthusiasm of the news. Not a positive sign. Over the course of last week, we can take a look at the S&Ps. A lot of enthusiasm. We saw some big gap ups. We saw some big up days. And the market really needs to defend last week if it's going to go higher. And we got to look at volume. This is the S&Ps from last week. We saw that low put in down here, and we traded right back into resistance yesterday on that up news you can see right here. So firmly into resistance and utterly just getting rejected. Volume coming up ever so slightly. As we get into summer, I expect volume to taper down a little bit, but yesterday market definitely making a statement that is one big ugly candlestick to the downside. The trend still in place here. You can see our averages still turning, our 21, which is our intermediate term trend, still pointing down, which to me tells us that the market is not done probing the downside. And I do anticipate potentially we could trade back in to last week's lower range. We have that open gap here around 129 in the S&Ps. That was the gap up from, I guess it was Monday into Tuesday, Tuesday into Wednesday of last week. So let's see how yesterday's big down move plays out over the next couple of days. Usually when you get a big expansion move like yesterday, you might get a day or two of contraction. So we could see range really contract for a day or two here before we potentially could probe a little lower.
Okay, and on that note then, with that in mind, tomorrow is a day full of events. We have retail sales, PPI, business inventories. How are you trading then heading into that?
Well, I think it's just a question of risk on or risk off. And for me and for a lot of the traders that I talk to on a daily basis, it's risk off. We're looking to day trade. It's leveraging the volatility of the market to our benefit. You can be in stocks that are moving 2, 3, 4% in a given day right now, and take advantage of that without having to go home with exposure either long or short. So for us, it's calculated tactical day trades in specific symbols and or indexes when they set up appropriately, and a lot of that stuff happens real time on the virtual trading floor.
Well, home builders were among the strongest sectors during the first quarter of this year, but a lot of the big names in this sector experienced a big outside day of selling off. Taking the XHB, for example, is selling off 3% yesterday. So where is support now?
Well, I think the question is, what's happening overall. We'll take a look at support and resistance in a second, but 3% move intraday is exactly the point that I'm making here, is that there is a lot of volatility embedded into the daily ranges here, which you don't see all that often. So we're trying to be we're trying here to take advantage of that, because that's something where you don't get that type of price movement all that often. As far as home builders go, we talked about real estate on the morning call a week or two ago, and as well as our last StockTwits conversation, setting up for lower prices. XHB gapping up a little bit yesterday and just selling off for the better part of the entire day. We look here at the XHB chart. There's not really a whole lot of support, or major support I should call it, until down around this $17 area. We look to the left and you can see that was resistance. That was the last breakout, and we could probe that series of lower highs and lower lows in place now. You can see lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and I anticipate that we will see another lower low again. So we're going to keep our eye for further downside here in home builders, and I think we could take a look at some specific home building stocks. Lennar was one, LEN. Very reflective of the XHB. Again, big sell-off yesterday. You can see the 21 EMA, this red line here. Make it nice and big. Into that 21 and failing yesterday. I suspect that, in a matter of a couple days, we could see lower, possibly back to this prior low here around, 2350, and potentially even lower. We can look at a weekly chart just to get an overall idea. We came from October. We had a nice run in home builders. Definitely starting to taper off here. If we can firmly close below $24 area, we have room to retrace here. And let me just put up some retracements here from a technical perspective. Even a 38% pullback down here around 23 or 50%, which is also the 200 EMA here on the weekly, down around 21. So definitely, home builders on the radar on the short side. Yesterday was really the big day down there. Now,
what about Toll Brothers? I think this stock was demonstrating some similar chart patterns as we saw in the XHB. Is there more downside in store there?
It looks like it. We can look at Toll here on the chart, and again, they're all going to trade. They're all going to trade to some degree together. As the underlying sector breaks down, the specific symbols will start to break down. But again, this has been a very, very strong sector for the better part of 2012 and the latter half of 2011. To me, it looks like there's a trade brewing in here. And again, we can look at retracements. We could see down, to the mid 22s and possibly 21 here in Toll Brothers. And we're still, it's still very overall not a broken chart, not a broken symbol. But yesterday, bear flagging. We saw, that heavy volume sell-off the beginning of June. A couple days of backing into declining averages and a big stick down yesterday. So that tells me that this stock, wants lower. And our first, micro level support isn't down to around the $22 area. So keep an eye on Toll Brothers for further downside.
And DR Horton hovering around the 100 a day. If the market continues to sell off today, will it easily break that level?
Yeah, I mean, again, same concept here. All the charts basically look the same. It's just sort of a mirror image. Big sell-off from 17 down to 14 here in DHI. 3 to 5 bar bounce into the 21 and selling, hitting the tape pretty hard. You can see volume coming up pretty substantially yesterday. So that tells us that, lower prices, really not just a question of if, just when. And we don't have any support in DR Horton Toll around the $13.5, $14 area. So, percentage-wise, we could see some lower prices here.
All right, well, coming up, we're going to dive into real estate stocks. But first, a quick commercial break, so stay with us.
Hi, I'm Sean Hendelman, CEO of T3 Live, where we train, coach, and mentor traders in order to help you put your money to work with confidence. The T3 Live approach is a blueprint for you to recognize, adapt, and ultimately take advantage of different market conditions. To begin your training with T3 Live, we would like to offer you the opportunity to enroll in our free 30-day online home study course. Fill in your name and email address, and I'll see you on the other side.
As Laz mentioned before, real estate stocks have been setting up for lower prices. Let's take a look at the IYR, which sold off from the top of the narrow channel that's been trading in yesterday. The 200-day acted as a strong resistance previously, so could it find some support there now?
IYR, real estate, the whole sector, whether it's home builders or REITs, the whole sector right now is an interesting trade developing. Let's take a look at IYR. And again, we talked about this, a few weeks back. The possibility setting up that we were in some sort of, topping pattern here. I mentioned this being a left shoulder, this possibly being a head, and this structure, developing a right shoulder. This is a very, very common technical trade here, and something we teach in the active trading course. You can see that we broke support actually a few days back around this $59 area in IYR. Probably sucked a lot of shorts in. Generally, when a stock breaks a level of support, it'll break support, it'll snap back, and then the next time it'll generally trade and slice right through. So this is something that we we're familiar with here, and it's exactly what happened. As the market bounced, so did real estate. But yesterday, that gap up, selling off very, very hard. And I anticipate that yesterday's price action will take the IYR and the whole sector down lower. Measured move here, roughly about this distance. From a chart pattern perspective, that's down to the to the mid 50s, 54, 55 area is where this price is in. So that's a pretty substantial downside move, and I suspect that if you use yesterday's high as sort of a risk, that there's a trade brewing in here, and keep your eye on real estate and the IYR for lower prices, definitely.
All right, so let's just mention a couple of those names then. Vornado Realty Trust, VNO, again, big down day yesterday. Safe to say, more downside in store here? Yeah,
I think we can look at the REITs here as a way to play. If you're not trading the ETF, look at the REITs. Vornado as one, again, same pattern where we had that break of support. You can see it, tailing through support a few days back, snapping back, and then, resetting itself. We have that same, chart pattern, that head and shoulder reversal pattern, which you see a lot of times develop before a stock or index, will trade lower. So in Vornado, we can basically look at this and, anticipate a move. And again, this is what we call table napkin technicals, down to $70, and you can see 70 here is our prior area of support. So something I'm going to watch in the days and weeks ahead are some of these REITs, Vornado being one of the leaders here in the industry.
Now, what about Simon Property Group? Again, an outside day yesterday. Can it find support around its recent low, I believe 141?
Looks to me like if real estate, starts to break down, Simon Property is going to break down. We now, we have a lower high in place here on the chart, and this has been a very good performing stock for the better part of, the last 6, 8, 10 months. Breaking the trend line, you can see here, we broke that uptrend. Bouncing around in here, flirting with support down here around 140, just a touch above it. Yesterday's price action, very aggressive to the downside, and I suspect that you want to keep an eye on yesterday's high as potential stop or risk here as this trade. First level would be down around the 140, and if we can break through there, you could see, like I said, lower prices down to around the 130 area. Last level of resistance or support will be, down around 130. So Simon Property, definitely on the radar, and I think this is really where real estate stocks, whether it's REITs or home builders, can get very interesting.
Let's touch on just one more of those. Liberty Property Trust looks like it has the same chart pattern. Can it hold its low level, 3340? Used to be strong support.
We're going to keep an eye. Again, this is sort of one that we don't really talk about much. It is a REIT. It doesn't quite have the same eyeballs or volume that you see with Vornado or Simon. But again, another way to play it so we're sort of, approaching different risk situations. Obviously, the cheaper price stocks don't incur as much risk unless you're putting on, very large positions. But I would keep an eye on what this stock does over the next, couple of days. It's a big move down yesterday on big volume. Again, volume is the driver. So when we see that volume, to me, it's a sign that, the market's telling us something. And this is a story that, potentially is just developing. Any short-term strength here against this, the highs from yesterday, which is right around 35, 75, 36. I'm going to look for any short-term strength to leg into a short.
All right, let's do some quick hits on some popular names here. Chipotle had a big outside day yesterday, sending out selling signal to investors. What are the key levels to watch here?
Well, I think it's really a pattern that's building here. Chipotle's held in relatively well, given the overall market, but it's developing a pattern here that I'm gonna pop up here on the chart. A little bit of a downward channel. You can see those 3 touches here, 1, 2, 3. Again, failing yesterday. This is a trade that I'd be very careful with against these highs. This is around 415, 418, just below 420. We came off pretty aggressively yesterday, and this has room to go lower, possibly to the 380 or lower band here of this channel. So this is a trade for those that are short-term active traders looking for, a way to trade Chipotle. Keep an eye on how this descending channel develops, and I do anticipate, we could see a push lower here, even another new low into the 370 area, 380 to 360 area. Again, this is a high beta name. It's going to move rapidly. Make sure that this fits your risk profile before you step into Chipotle. But as a trade here, for a short-term trade at this level, it does seem to me like you could step into the short side for a move down here.
All right, what about Cena? Has been grinding down ever since it had a big outside day on March 12th. It recently found support at 50. Can it hold that level?
Well, let's talk about, when we look at Cena and some of these trades, let's do something that I don't always do, but I think is a very helpful way of looking at a chart. So let's go to the chart and let's take a look at the chart without any candlesticks, without any price information. And what you have here is what I call the railroad tracks. And these are just parallel moving averages, you know, an 8 EMA below a 21 EMA, below a 200 EMA. This is a sign of a downtrend. So when a stock is in a downtrend, you know, what you don't want to do is try and pick a bottom. And, you know, when we look at these charts, and I can put the candlesticks back in, you know, you want to respect the fact that the path of least resistance here is down. So any short-term strength, you can see here, even in the near term, where we really haven't gone anywhere, we really have been basing. You know, you can see in that 50 to 55 area, a little bit of volatility in here, but any short-term strength, again, the pop-up is sold back down. The pop-up is sold back down. The pop-up sold back down, which is exactly what you saw yesterday. And if the market continues lower, the ones that are already in a downtrend that have, you know, continued sellers and any short-term strength are going to go lower. So the level here that we need to look at in Cena is down, you know, where these two tails are, which is around $47. That's the area, again, I think that bottom pickers or traders are going to try and step in for a calculated long. So it looks like in the short term we could, you know, try and test that level again in the mid 40s. So I wouldn't, you know, this is not a trade I'd look to be long right now.
All right, Expedia looking good these days. Where would a good entry point be here?
Finally, something we can talk about that, you know, that has a better looking, you know, more bullish structure to it. And again, if we did the same exact technique, and I take the candlesticks away, almost the opposite. We have a nice, you know, uptrend in place. You have rising, you know, averages. This is a sign of you know, a healthy stock being bought on pullbacks. And if we put the candlesticks back in, you know, you can see exactly that. Any short-term pullback here has been bought. Now, if the market continues to sell off, it's going to be very hard, you know, to be on the long side of a trade. It's just it needs the market to participate. But we want to gauge the composure here. You know, it had a nice breakout, you know, a few days back above that 46 level, trading as much as 48. And even yesterday with that big sell-off, really not much damage here. So this is one that I wouldn't suggest necessarily being long right here, right now. But on any pullback, on any market strength, this could be a stock to go to for higher prices. When we look at the weekly chart here, again, just getting sort of a more bullish view. Or excuse me, a broader view. You know, we really broke out on the weekly, so these are all-time highs here in Expedia. You know, and you don't want to chase price, and you know, like I said, you got to be careful being long in a really weak tape. But if you do see, you know, a good trader has a good watch list, and this is a stock you want to put on your, you know, on the side of, you know, a good long. When the market shows you strength, you're gonna look to this stock consistently for opportunity. As it sets up. I wouldn't necessarily be a buyer right here, right now, like I said, but on any short-term weakness, I'd look to maybe leg in, so long as this, you know, this overall structure continues to look this way.
Now, what about the TLT? Because that's been holding up well. When will that be ready for a bigger move to the upside?
Well, that's a good question. TLT has been a good trade. It's been a good day trade for a lot of the shorter-term traders. There's been some good, you know, volatility, good volume here. Notice the volume. We're seeing some big spikes here in volume, which is always good. A lot of liquidity in this name. It's had a huge run. We saw a pullback, you know, a 3 or 4 day pullback in the TLTs. Looks like it's starting to base in here. If it can't really leg up from this area, we could see one more pullback. You know, it did trade back to support. This is a daily chart, and you can see, you know, back into support. This is where we broke out from not too long ago. So trying to hold this area, build a base. If it can hold this area and start to turn up, you could see this make another new high.
All right, and quickly, Google showing relative weakness, trading below all key moving averages. Is this an avoid, a short, potentially both?
Yeah, I mean, it's not worth. Again, it depends on what you're looking for and what type of trader you are. If you are an active, shorter-term trader, there's opportunity here. The opportunity is to be on the short side. As the market rallied last week, even a relative weakness concept, which I know Scott talks about all the time, relatively weak. Market had a big move last week. the stock really only saw 1 or 2 up days, very, very, mild buying at best. And the second we turned down yesterday, the stock was right back to its lows. So, there is a push here to get out of this stock. It is back to a level where there is more significant support down here around the 560 mark. You can see looking left, this is where the stock has held the last few times. But I think this time is different. Volume coming up yesterday, and it looks like this stock is, headed for lower prices below this 565 mark, these prior lows. You have room to go lower. There is what we call a void or a pocket in here of just, a lack of support. So we wouldn't really see anything until possibly the $500 mark or even lower. So Google to me is one stock that definitely is speaking of lower prices.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Les. Happy trading, everybody. Have a great day.